The words barely escaped her lips, almost swallowed by shame, but they landed like a thunderclap in the small bakery. "Is there any expired cake?" In that moment the room seemed to hold its breath. The smell of fresh bread, the warm lights, the neat rows of pastries, everything felt cruelly out of place next to the desperation in her voice. She stood there thin, exhausted, her clothes worn and torn, one arm wrapped protectively around her little daughter who stared at the glass display with wide, hungry eyes. And just a few steps behind her, unnoticed by both of them, a black single father heard everything, and what he decided to do next would change all of their lives. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet miracles that happen in everyday places, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The woman hadn't planned to come inside the bakery. She had stood outside for several minutes, watching customers walk in laughing, pointing at cakes, tapping cards without thinking. Every step toward the door felt heavier than the last. Hunger had a way of eroding pride, and when her daughter tugged gently at her hand and whispered that she was hungry, the last wall inside her finally cracked. She promised herself she wouldn't beg. She wouldn't ask for charity. She would just ask for what others no longer wanted. The bakery worker behind the counter looked at her with narrowed eyes, already annoyed before the question was even finished. This woman had seen dozens like her, she told herself. People who came in with stories, with excuses. She crossed her arms and glanced at the child, then back at the mother's torn dress and dirty sleeves, and the silence stretched long enough to sting. The mother's cheeks burned as she lowered her eyes, bracing herself for rejection, for humiliation, for the familiar feeling of being invisible. What she didn't know was that someone else was watching. The man behind her had come in to buy a simple cake for his son's birthday. Being a single dad hadn't been easy, but he worked hard, saved carefully, and tried to make small moments feel special. As he waited in line, scrolling through messages from his babysitter, he heard that question, soft, broken, and painfully careful. It stopped him cold. He lifted his head and saw the little girl's face pressed close to the glass, her fingers tracing the outline of cakes she knew she'd never taste. The memory hit him without warning. Years ago, after his wife passed, there were nights he pretended he wasn't hungry, so his son could eat. Nights when pride argued with survival. Nights when he wondered how close he was to losing everything. He remembered the weight of being judged, of being looked through instead of at. And standing there in that bakery, he felt something tighten in his chest. The worker finally shook her head, her expression firm and dismissive. The mother nodded quickly, as if she had expected nothing else. She whispered a thank you that sounded more like an apology and gently turned her daughter away from the counter. That was when the man stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't announce himself as a hero. He simply placed his wallet on the counter and asked the worker to box up the biggest cake in the display, along with pastries, bread, and milk. The worker blinked, confused, and started doing as she was told. The mother froze, unsure of what was happening, fear and hope colliding in her eyes. When the boxes were ready, the man picked them up and turned to her. He looked at her not with pity, but with understanding. He handed her the boxes as if this was the most normal thing in the world, as if she belonged there just as much as anyone else. Tears streamed down her face before she could stop them. She clutched the boxes, her hands trembling, and pulled her daughter close. The little girl looked up at the man with pure wonder, like she was seeing something magical. The mother wanted to speak, to explain, to justify her existence, but no words came. She had forgotten what it felt like to be seen without being judged. The man didn't linger. He gave a small nod, paid, and walked toward the door. But something made him turn back. He told her quietly that hard seasons don't last forever, that asking for help doesn't make someone weak, and that someday she would be the reason someone else believed in kindness again. Those words stayed with her long after he left. As the bakery door closed behind him, the room felt different. The worker avoided the mother's eyes, suddenly aware of the weight of her earlier judgment. The mother knelt beside her daughter, opening the box just enough for the smell of cake to escape. And for the first time in a long while, the child laughed, a real, full laugh that echoed hope. That day didn't solve all their problems. The mother still had struggles ahead, still faced uncertainty and fear. But it gave her something she hadn't felt in years: dignity. It reminded her that kindness can come from strangers, that the world isn't always as cold as it seems, and that sometimes one quiet act can carry someone through their darkest night. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment near the end of this video to like, share, and comment. Your engagement helps spread messages of compassion and humanity to people who truly need them. And before you go, leave a comment sharing whether you believe small acts of kindness can change lives. Because somewhere right now, someone is whispering a desperate question, hoping the world will be gentle, and your belief might be the proof they need.